Well, welcome back again this week to an analysis behind the news. First of all, I want to give you a website to go to look something up to verify what we've been saying in these videos for quite some time. And that is, I want you to look up something like this. You'll get to it no matter how you combine it. Just ask on Google or Bing or whatever search engine you use, pro-Kurdish demonstration in Ankara, Turkey explosion. In other words, any combination of the fact that it was a pro-Kurdish demonstration, it was in Ankara, Turkey, and that there was an explosion will get you there. You'll see that there are a number of references to that and a video on several sites. Go to the one that's from the BBC.com. If you take a look at that particular video, you will see immediately what the problem is. And this pro-Kurdish demonstration that was blown up, part of it, injured, killed, I guess over 80 people, injured quite a number. You'll see a huge banner being carried by the demonstrators that's got the hammer and sickle on it. Can't miss it. Big red banner. And this is the pro-Kurdish demonstration to help the Kurds. And we've been saying for some time that there's a problem with this. That, you know, we can't look at things through this small microscope. We've got to look at the whole vista, look at the whole thing, and see what's going on. We have a tendency to just look at American press, American media, without going overseas and seeing what are they saying about the same thing. And do they have documentary evidence, that will bring to us a little more information that we need to know here at home about what's going on over there. And this is one of those instances where it's right in front of you, and it's in the video that was shown all over the world, but very, very seldom inside the United States, to show that the communists are supporting the Kurds. And so are most of the Republican candidates for president. Interesting. It shows a decided lack of knowledge about what's going on. In other words, they're looking through a microscope instead of looking at the whole total picture. It's the same way with something else that's been thrown at me a few times by people recently. That soon there'll be a revolution in the United States. If we don't stop what's going on through Congress and everything else, there's going to be a revolution. And they support this idea. And I say to them, well, you can't have a revolution in the United States. Well, why not? Well, number one, what organization would you use for the revolution? You know, when we had the War of Independence here in the United States, it was a revolution, if you want to put that word on it, from the top down. But the bottom up was a cry for freedom. In other words, the people cried for freedom, but it was their own governments that put it all together, the colonies, which became the states. And by the way, not all of the colonies were involved in the War of Independence. Many of them remained with England in Canada and to the south. Not all the American British colonies were part of the American Revolution as we know it, just 13 of them. But they were united into a Continental Congress. They were organized. They financed an army, albeit it was kind of skimpy and it was pretty bad, but they finally got their act together and defeated the British. The thing is that it was done through an organization, our own government at the time. Today, what organization is there that exists that could possibly organize and finance and coordinate a successful revolution against our own? It would be another civil war, but all over the country at the same time. So you see, no real organization exists to do that sort of thing, even if it was something that you would want to do. Another thing is that they say that, well, you know, 3/4 of our military would defect, and that would give us the wherewithal to have a revolution. Well, I don't know where they come up with those numbers, particularly since the hierarchy of our military, too many of them belong to the Council on Foreign Relations and such organizations that want internationalism, that want bigger government, that are part of the whole coterie of the problem that exists today when it comes to big government and everything else. 3/4 of our people would defect and join the revolution. Well, are you taking into account the 30,000 that are in Korea, the thousands that are in Italy, the tens of thousands that are in Germany, the tens of thousands in the Middle East? Which ones are you talking about? Just the ones here at home? You see, you've got the military spread all over the world into 170 countries. So when you're talking about 3/4 of our military defecting into a revolution for freedom, well, it's a bit problematic, isn't it? The other thing is, how would you supply them? The government wouldn't be behind it. The government supplies the military. They supply their paychecks. That would be a problem. Another thing is that 80% of the components for all of our military equipment comes from overseas. That would be a problem. Then, too, what would China and Russia be doing while we were having this revolution? I'm sure they would not be sitting on their hands. Oh, I don't think for a minute that they would invade us and that sort of thing in a moment of weakness, because their minions are already here. They're called immigrants. Much of what's been going on, in the immigrant fight demonstrates that they have already infiltrated an awful lot of people into this country. Not just to vote, as most people think, but to perform acts of terror and violence once the signal would be given. And a violent upheaval amongst the American people would be an opportune moment for those things to start to happen. At any rate, the idea that we can have a revolution in this country is a bit far-fetched. First of all, look around you. Look around your neighborhood. The other people that you deal with, do they really have your knowledge of what independence, what freedom, what liberty really means? Are they constitutionalists? Would we have a revolution, and let's say, to get rid of what's going on in Washington, D.C., what would they replace it with if they're as ignorant as they are today, which allows what's going on in Washington, D.C. to be going on? You see, there's a lot of things that even if we were able to throw the rascals out through armed violence, what would we be replacing it with? Just more ignorance. And that sort of thing. You see that in some of the solutions that even amongst the conservatives have. The so-called Constitutional Convention and things of that nature. I saw a video of a panel of such individuals over the weekend where they said they don't worry about any consequences, that the consequences would be negligible compared to what we have today. Well, I'm sorry, I don't feel that way if it's based on ignorance. If you're building something on ignorance, it won't work. Our founders of this country were not ignorant people. They understood human nature, they understood the nature of government, and they understood the problem, they understood the solution, and they gave us a solution. It's a solution we need to get back to, but again, it begins by education. It begins by work. It begins by getting people to understand what the United States is all about, its independence, and how it's a beacon to the rest of the world through its liberty and Constitution that has created what we have become. We would never have become what we see today as the United States on the world stage, or a good economy, or anything else, if it hadn't been for this education amongst the American people initially that led to the War of Independence. We have to have the fervor to adopt the work necessary to educate our fellow Americans, to understand the problems, but also the solution, and that solution is abiding by the Constitution of the United States. If you can do that, neighborhood by neighborhood, city by city, we will win. But unless you have the resolve to do it, the will to do it, and just simply get up out of your chair and go out outside of your home and get to work, it's not going to happen. So any idea of armchair revolutionaries, it's not going to work. I'm not going to say that there might not be little places here and there and little brush fires and so on and so forth might happen in the coming years because of the draconian nature of our government and people standing up and saying, enough is enough. But under the current conditions, it can't happen successfully. A lot more work has to be done in educating the people. Let's get about doing that. Join the John Birch Society and help us educate people, particularly the opinion molders in your community. Spend a little more time on our website, find out how you can do that, contact us to get involved. We'll show you how to organize. Got to be done today or it won't get done tomorrow. Until next week, we'll see you then.